You, Maria.
Thanks, Lynn. Hi, everyone. As Lynn said, I'm Maria. Lovely to meet you all. And today we are looking at, does your diet affect your immune system? And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll agree with me that it does. So first of all, I just wanted to talk about what the immune system actually is. So your immune system is your body's safeguard against infections, illness, and disease. It's a network of cells, tissues, and organs that organizes your defense against any threats to your health, like incoming bacteria, viruses, or toxins. So your immune system identifies a pathogen, it realizes that it shouldn't be in your body, and it launches an attack to kill that pathogen. We know that if you have a weakened immune system, you have a decreased ability to ward off infection and an increased susceptibility to catching all sorts of diseases. I know that you guys have covered this quite extensively in the last few weeks, so I won't go too much into the stress response, maybe just a little bit about how it actually influences your digestive system. So at any one time, you can be in one of two states: fight, flight, freeze, which is your stress response, or rest and digest. If you're in fight, flight, freeze, your digestive system is essentially shut down, which if you're eating and you're stressed, you're not digesting your food properly. So if you are finding yourself stressed, especially at this time where a lot of us are experiencing increased stress levels, just before sitting down to eat, do some of that deep breathing that was practiced a few weeks ago. Do a dance, sing a song, just to try to get your body into that relaxed mode so that you're actually secreting all your digestive juices and producing the enzymes necessary to digest your food properly. Naomi, the please ask questions box has just been moved over, and it's actually on where I need to move the slides. Yep, thank you. So just some basics. Does food actually matter when it comes to your immune system? And hopefully I can show you it does. We know through research that making some simple dietary changes has been shown to improve DNA repair, give you a better stress and immune response, and postpone or delay age-related phenotypes. How do we achieve this? So hopefully I can show you some really simple basic things that you can do within your own home, which won't cost you a lot of money, are easy to implement, and are sustainable. One of the big things that we know through research is to improve your insulin regulation. So if you eat refined carbs or sugary food, this causes a big spike in your blood sugar level, which makes you feel great when the sugar's up here, but then it causes a big slump as well. So the slump that you experience after eating white carbs puts your blood sugar at a lower rate than before you even ate the food. Your pancreas then freaks out and it sends out lots of insulin. This blood glucose drops even lower. It makes you feel tired and cranky, and generally people will reach for more sugary foods. And we know that having this kind of eating pattern contributes to people feeling more grumpy, more tired, developing insulin resistance, and then is potentially linked to the development of conditions like diabetes, and some really interesting research coming out on its link to cardiovascular disease as well. This is a kind of simple fix. If you're having white foods like white pasta, white bread, white rice, swap it for brown foods. So eat brown rice, eat brown pasta, eat wholemeal bread. Having a nice carb dense or complex carb food every 2 hours, or something high in protein every 2 hours, will give you a nice, even, sustained energy release. And this simple change has been shown to have quite significant effects on your immune response. The next point is following a Mediterranean diet with portion-controlled protein also can have a really good effect on your immune system. So this is eating real foods, I guess, for lack of a better term, or whole foods, I think the recent term has been coined. So lots of fresh veggies. Your dinner plate should consist mostly of fresh veggies, whole grains like we discussed, brown rice, quinoa, buckwheat, lots of fish, plenty of good fats. Adding a little tablespoon of olive oil to your salad or your veggies every night, avocado, nuts and seeds, and just limiting packaged and processed foods as much as possible. The next 3 points are keeping your gut healthy, eating foods rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber and flavonoids, and increasing the intake of immune boosting foods, but we'll go through that in a little bit more detail over the next few slides. So I think, as Lynn mentioned, I don't know if there's any area of health research that has been more widely researched in the last 5 years than gut health. We know that gut health is linked to improved immune states, decreased inflammation, and actually some really lovely research coming out about its effect on mental health as well. So essentially, your gut is full of bacteria. Sometimes people say good bacteria and bad bacteria, but essentially it's all bacteria that belongs in your gut, but it should exist in kind of an equilibrium. So some bacteria should be high, some bacteria should be low, some bacteria should be at a mid-range, and there are things that we can do that affect whether the good bacteria is more prevalent or the bad bacteria is more prevalent, for lack of a better word. We are born with a gut full of bacteria that we inherit from our parents, and there are things that we do throughout our lives that influences its growth. So having a lot of those white sugary foods can have a negative effect on the growth of bacteria and can cause a lot of gut inflammation, whereas having foods such as pre and probiotics can have really positive effects on your gut health. This is so important for your immune system because 80% of immune cells are actually grown in your gut. If your gut is unhealthy, your capacity to grow your own immune cells is actually compromised. But once again, some of the things you can do to actually improve your gut health are pretty simple. So there are two types of foods you should be having, and you should be having them on a regular basis. So taking a probiotic supplement, as a one-off isn't actually going to change your gut health, but having these foods as often as possible will. So prebiotics are foods that act like a fertilizer. They support your digestive system to have the right environment to help proliferate more good bacteria. Probiotics are actually food where you are putting live bacteria into your gut. So if you're having prebiotics, foods like beetroot, berries, apples, all of those are prebiotic rich and will set the right environment for good gut health. Whereas with probiotics, that's more foods like good quality yogurt, milk, kefir, kombucha. I think kombucha is another thing that's exploded recently. You can buy kombucha in the supermarket, but you just have to be mindful of how much sugar is in it because some of them are actually very high in sugar, which counteracts the good effects of the kombucha. And foods like sauerkraut and traditionally made pickles. However, these probably need to be purchased from a health food store because the ones that are commercially available in the supermarket tend to not be made in the correct way, so they don't use that fermentation process, so might not have that good health effect. Vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber, and flavonoids. There are so many different foods which we know are very rich in vitamins and minerals and can have really great effects on health. I think what we know though is having a deficiency of certain vitamins and minerals, especially zinc, this is probably the one that's researched the most, can actually increase your susceptibility to immune infection and increase your susceptibility to contracting different viruses and colds and flus. However, if you have a healthy amount of zinc, taking a lot of supplements potentially doesn't have any effect at all. So it's not about going out and buying lots of different supplements and taking as many of those as possible. It's about having a well-balanced diet where you're having plenty of fresh vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, fish. That's really the key to kind of maintaining good health. So we might just look at zinc here. The reason that zinc is so important for your immune system is because it's essential to a lot of enzyme functioning. It's actually needed for some type of immune cells to be able to be grown at all. It helps balance your inflammatory immune responses, and once again, a deficiency is significantly linked to a decreased immune function. Vitamin C, probably another really common one that most of us have heard about. High in antioxidants, it decreases the inflammatory response. And by inflammatory response, I mean overly prolific inflammatory response. It may decrease the symptoms of respiratory infections and may also decrease symptoms of colds and bronchitis and the severity and duration of those conditions as well. Trying to see how I'm going for time. Nearly done. Sorry, Lynn. And I just wanted to go through a few really common foods that you might find in your house that we know have a good research base for improving your immune system or improving that immune response. Possibly my favorite is chicken stock or chicken soup because it tastes good and you can just chuck so many good and healthy foods into there. We know that chicken stock decreases inflammation. It may help decrease infection. The heat can actually help kill certain viruses, and this one's a little bit gross. It helps with the movement of your nasal fluid, so essentially makes you more snotty. But by doing that, it actually helps you get rid of the bacteria that might be stuck in that nasal passage. So the reason I like chicken stock is because you get some chicken drumsticks, you chuck it in water, and then you can add just about all these foods in there as well. So some garlic, some onions, some turmeric, some ginseng, some ginger. If you actually add other vegetables like the ones listed above, beetroot, root vegetables, sweet potato, pumpkin, blend it all up, chuck it in the freezer in portion sizes, pull one out every day and just have a cup of that a day. That will do tremendous things for your immune system. I think, is that you signaling to finish up, Lynn, or?
I think they were just the slides that were in your pack. So was there anything else you wanted to cover?
Look, I could go on. I think when I first sent Lynn the presentation, I had about 3 times as many slides, so I could probably talk about this forever. But I think we've covered some good basics. And if you're happy for me to finish up, I'm happy to finish up as well.
Yeah. Well, I particularly we were wanting the opportunity for people to ask questions so that they, can address particular issues that are of interest to them. One question I had, if I can start off, was that a lot of people say that the fish is really important. But I remember seeing a movie about the damage in our oceans and how a lot of that is getting into fish, and then we end up eating it. So just the amount of pollution that is in our oceans. So I actually sort of stopped eating fish for a little while, but I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the best sort of fish to have and where to get it and how to avoid that worry about, especially because they say sardines, the oily fishes, the oily fish, but sardines are because they're the smallest, they sort of can take in more of those pollutions or that pollution.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Lynn, there's no good answer here. My understanding is that, contrary to popular belief, a lot of the fish that we get from the supermarket is actually farm bred fish rather than ocean based fish. I remember when I was doing uni to be a naturopath, which is like 20 years ago or something like that, we had to have a trip where we went to the Queen Victoria Market and we had to go around and ask the different fish sellers or fishmongers who actually got their fish from the ocean versus who got the fish from farming, and everyone said farming. So it's allegedly much more likely that they're getting that kind of fish. However, that brings its own issue of the fish being in very small spaces, so consuming a lot of each other's waste products, which then can cause a whole host of other issues. Okay. So I wish there was a good answer here, but there's not. What we know is that the studies on fish oils are very positive. I was actually interested reading up about some last night and about the difference in EPA and DHA. And essentially what we see is that an oil like EPA has profound effects on decreasing inflammation in the brain, regardless of whether it is farm fished or ocean fished and whether it has high mercury or doesn't have high mercury. If you buy a good quality fish oil supplement, sometimes it'll actually test for the mercury levels and it'll actually give you an indication of whether mercury is high or not high, and that can be a really good way to make good decisions about taking fish oil. Unfortunately, when it comes to fish itself, it's much harder to actually police that and to know those levels when you buy them. My understanding was small fish is actually better because it doesn't take up as much mercury. So even though sardines, you'd think it'd be the opposite, it's actually supposed to be small fatty fish are the best options.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
and salmon is probably the best known one. And the reason that salmon is often recommended as being the best is because it's so rich in those oils, richer than any other type of fish.
Oh, okay. And what about deep sea wild caught fish?
I think that would be ideal. Um, but once again, uh, we have no idea what the mercury levels might be in any of the fish we eat, essentially, unless it's actually tested for that, and you have a mercury level before you.
Okay. And
Yeah,
what?
but look, the long and short of that being that the benefits still seem to outweigh the cons.
Oh, okay. And would you get the same benefit from canned salmon?
It kind of depends. So if the canned salmon is has the oil retained from it, then you do. So it's the oil itself that is so good for you.
Okay.
So, even if you buy fish that is potentially in olive oil, the olive oil will give you some level of benefit. But if you have fish that's in water, some of that, the goodness and the oil actually seeps into the water and decreases the amount of benefit you might be able to get from it. But when there's been some research done on frozen fish or frozen vegetables versus fresh fish and fresh vegetables, we see that potentially if it's snap frozen, so frozen as soon as they get it, it actually retains more of the goodness than fish that's served without being frozen, or vegetables that are served without being frozen, because of how we handle the vegetables and vegetables are often frozen and then defrosted to present them as fresh, and same with fish. They're actually frozen and they're taken to the supermarket and actually defrosted, so all the goodness seeps out in the water.
Mm. And what are your options if you have a reflux response to the fish oil tablets?
Go and find a fish oil that actually is low reflux. So there is specific, nearly all the kind of good brands. I always say go to a health food shop and actually talk to them about it, and say which is the lowest reflux. And there'll be ones that specific say, lowest chance of reflux or improved reflux response or whatever. And that is often about it being coated in an enteric coating so that you're breaking it down slowly rather than getting that massive kind of rush of oil all at once.
Yeah, okay. Um, okay. And Mary's asking, is there a place that people can get their gut health assessed? So you've got a starting point for. Uh,
Yeah, there is actually a wonderful test that you can get. I would say that I only know naturopaths and nutritionists that would probably order this test. If there's someone else out there that does it, I apologize. So there's a test you can get, and it's fantastic. It's a very interesting test. It looks at what is your bacteria doing in your gut, which one's prevalent, which one's low, and then it kind of tells you where should it be at. So which ones should you be trying to increase, which ones should you be trying to decrease. It shows whether you have any parasites in your gut, which is surprisingly common. A lot of the time people pick up parasites, they have acute symptoms, and then the acute symptoms go away, but the parasites still linger. It also shows you, if you've got any other inflammatory influences on your gut, and gives you it's a wonderful test. It gives you an analysis and kind of an explanation of what you should do about it as well.
hmm. Oh,
It's
good.
probably my single favorite test to do as a naturopath.
Oh, yes. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And so you mentioned about the, doing some chicken stock and freezing it and just having it there every day. Are there any other, because some of the other slides that you were going to go through had some suggestions for meals and food.
Yeah.
I wondered
So this is my top 3 suggestions would be to make up the chicken stock, chuck plenty of vegetables, blend it up and freeze it in portions. The other one was to get heaps of those vegetables listed above. So your root vegetables, your pumpkin, some oil, some garlic, cook that up, maybe even roast it for extra flavor, blend that up, put it in ice cube trays, and just literally take out 1 hour ice cube tray a day and add it to your meal. That will dramatically increase your vitamins and minerals. And then my third one is smoothies. So smoothies are fantastic because you can just chuck anything you want in there. You can even hide really gross tasting supplements. So I do recommend some supplements when I'm working with people that I think are really great for gut health, but they're food-based supplements. So things like inulin, which is a prebiotic powder made from Jerusalem artichoke, psyllium, which is made from a seed, just those kind of simple ones that we had a couple of slides back. Where are they? No, I think it's on the slide that no one can read. So just some simple foods like that. 1 tablespoon of those in a good quality milk or a good quality almond milk. Chuck in some yogurt, blend it all up, drink it down. If you add things like berries, banana, honey, you're adding more and more prebiotic rich foods. It's really tasty, so it's not offensive tasting. Most people really enjoy smoothies. You can change the flavor to suit yourself, and yeah, you can just sneak so many different good things into it.
And what about, for people with stress? Is there a particularly good group of foods to support them at the moment?
Yeah, so that would be the slides that I presented, was probably the easiest things that you can put into your diet. I had another recipe there at the end, which I think Lynn will share the slides with you all when we're done, which was a honey syrup. This is actually something my mum used to use when we were kids to boost our immune system. And interestingly, when I went to uni, there was some research being done around this syrup being really, really good for your health. You get some honey, you chop up some ginger, some ginseng, some garlic, some onions, some turmeric. You put it in a jar, you put the honey on top, you give it a shake, leave it for a couple of days, and then keep it in your fridge. And just literally having a tablespoon of that a day is shown to have a really significant effect on your immune system, because it's so rich in prebiotics, probiotics. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps, like we can see with turmeric, it actually increases the activation and the efficiency of some of your immune cells. It's antioxidant, it's antiviral, antimicrobial. I mean, it's so good for you, and it's so simple, and it actually tastes really lovely as well.
And what about the different types of milk, soy and rice and almond?
Yeah.
What about dairy as we're coming into winter? So using different types of milk in smoothies and things like that.
Yeah, look, Lynn, I think this is a very controversial issue, and the truth is, it's probably, I don't really know. That's probably the truth. There's some evidence to show that milk can be very inflammatory for some people. So if milk is inflammatory for you, it will produce the inflammatory effect. And obviously, if you have inflammation in your body, it decreases your immune response. So the best way to test that for yourself is to maybe go a couple of weeks without milk, record how you're feeling, then have a couple of weeks on milk and record how you're feeling when you are on milk. For some people who come to see me as a naturopath, they sometimes have conditions that they've had for years, which are very inflammatory-based conditions such as hay fever or asthma or eczema, and we see that removing foods like gluten or dairy is extremely beneficial for them and essentially eliminates those symptoms. For some people, they are fine with those foods and they don't need to eliminate them. So it's about trying to identify what works for you and what's right for you, and then going from that point. It's really important if you do decide that almond milk's a better option. Personally, I drink almond milk because it's made of almonds, so it's got some of those really good benefits in terms of zinc and B vitamins. But I am intolerant to milk. It makes me very ill, so that's why I went to almond milk. However, as with all foods, not all almond milk is created equal. Some almond milks are extremely high in sugar. Some of them have heaps of additives. Some of them are well fortified. Some of them aren't well fortified. So it's about, actually looking at the ingredients and trying to work out what's right for you. If you're really trying to boost zinc levels and boost, some of those other things that we discussed here, have a look at the foods and see, well, what foods am I lacking? Am I lacking nuts? Do I like nuts? If I don't like nuts, how can I get them into my diet? So potentially having something like almond milk is an easy way to increase your nut consumption without having to eat nuts if you don't like them. I don't know if that really answers your question, but yeah.
I'm
So there
personally.
was a specific soy question there. So
Yeah.
soy milk is very beneficial for some people and not beneficial for other people.
Mm.
The issue with soy is that it's high in estrogen. So for some people that's fantastic, and for some people that's not. We know that if you're going through menopause, it can help with hot flushes, but we know that if you're prone to estrogen-based diseases, you should probably avoid it. So it's once again, unfortunately, there's not an answer of one thing for everyone. It's about understanding who you are, where you're at, and what kind of things your body might benefit from.
Yes, yes, because I think if you can't have dairy, you can't have it in any form,
That's right,
grain
absolutely.
or anything really. So
Yeah,
it just, but if you can, well, then that's a different thing. But
that's
um,
right.
yeah, but if
And
you're
and
not going to cut it out, you need to cut it out every cheese. I mean, the whole
Yeah,
lot.
well, that depends. So there's three different type of allergic responses you can have.
Mhm.
One's that kind of autoimmune anaphylactic response, which probably everyone knows, where you need an EpiPen. But then there's two different type of immune responses. One's a more systemic response, and one's a gut response. And if you just have a gut response to milk, you could actually be reacting to lactose. So that's what we call a lactose intolerance. If you're lactose intolerant, you probably can consume a certain amount of lactose every day without feeling sick, but it's when you cross the threshold that it really affects you. So hard cheeses are very low in lactose, milk is very high in lactose. You can actually buy a range of dairy in the supermarket now, which is lactose free. So if your only issue is lactose and you don't have a systematic immune response, you might actually be able to consume lactose free dairy. But once again, it's very individual, and it's about testing those foods yourself, usually under the guidance of a naturopath or a nutritionist to actually talk you through that process. But testing the foods and seeing how does my body react to them.
Mm. Yes, yeah. Yes, well, that's been wonderful. We've sort of got to 12 o'clock nearly already, and we have been finishing these webinars with a mindfulness practice. And so I asked Maria what was her go-to practice, and she talked about the leaves on the stream, on a stream. And so this is about being an observer to your thoughts and a process that allows you to do that. So did you want to just go through that really quickly, or
Yep.
Maria? Yeah.
Yep. Are you happy for me to read through the whole thing? Is that, yep, beautiful. So if everyone who's participating is happy to just sit back and, in a relaxed position, it's suggested that you close your eyes if you're comfortable to do so. So the Leaves in a Stream exercise is based on the idea that you can become an observer of your thoughts and emotions rather than getting caught up or hooked by them. Typically, people find that using their imagination can help to foster taking the observer perspective and to recognize that emotions are not permanent. They are always changing and fluctuating, but eventually they pass. In this exercise, we use the imagery of sitting by a stream and imagining your thoughts and emotions like leaves floating by and eventually passing away. So get in a comfortable position, feet on the floor, arms and legs uncrossed, hands resting comfortably in your lap. Allow your eyes to close gently, or if you don't feel comfortable, just gaze downwards or pick a spot in front of you. Take a few moments to get in touch with the movement of your breath and the sensation in your body. Bring your awareness to the physical sensation in your body, especially the sensation of touch or pressure. Think about how your feet feel touching the floor, how your body feels against the chair, how your hands rest in your lap. Bring your attention to your breathing. Notice each inhale and exhale. You don't need to change anything about your breathing, just notice it. Notice the sensation in your belly as you breathe in and breathe out. Light stretching of the in-breath and the gentle deflate of the out-breath. Fullness of air as it's drawn in through your nose and the slight change in temperature as it leaves your nose. As you imagine yourself sitting by the stream, you might notice a lot of emotions coming to you. You can use pictures or words to represent the emotions that you're feeling, and you might want to label them. For example, you might say, there is calmness, or frustration, or fear, or sadness. You might think about how they feel in your body, taking the time to notice the physical effects that they have on you and the way you feel. Take some time to observe your emotional experience, making no attempt to change how you are feeling. Just noticing, labeling them, then putting them on the leaves and watching them pass you by down the stream. Sometimes we think of emotions as good or bad, but this exercise says that all emotions are okay. They all need to be felt, but we don't need to get caught up in them. You can feel them, label them, put them on the leaves, and watch them float down the stream away from us. As you notice your emotion and thoughts, remember that you don't have to get swept up in them. You don't need to change them or fight them or get rid of them. You can just watch, observe, experience what's going on with you right now, and then let them go past or disappear in their own time. Keep breathing slowly in and out as you watch your thoughts and emotions arise and stay and go in their own time. When you are ready, open your eyes and bring this mindfulness exercise to a close.
Thank you very much, Maria. That's just wonderful, and it is a great exercise, that one, to know that our emotions just need to be felt and acknowledged. They don't need to be engaged in, and they can be let go. But they need, but to acknowledge them is an important part of that letting go process. So thank
Absolutely.
you so much. That's just been
Thank you for
wonderful.
having me.
Yeah,
It's been
no,
wonderful.
fantastic. And yeah, next week we're going to be joined by Father Constantine, as we thought at this time we also need some spiritual sustenance. And Father Constantine, for those who know him, does wonderful work in the community, social housing, and all sorts of wonderful things. So we will look forward to that as well. So thank you so much, Maria. Bye
Thank you.
now. Bye. Bye. Thanks, Maria.